want to summarize what we discussed? So basically, well, yeah, Colin, I'll let you speak.
Do you want to jump back to the INQA doc?
Yes.
The prompting. So we were at the very top of the right?
Yeah, we were just core challenge, no?
That's right.
Yeah.
So we started here where the in-person meeting at INQA kind of brought up these three main points. And I kind of hijacked the discussion to think about these kind of meta challenges, which we've all had experiences with. So they're not directly to the scientific content, but in conducting the science, what are some of the challenges? Because there are some that are very specific, or at least the challenge is more emphasized working in the global south compared to the global north, at least. So I think we've kind of seen these challenges that we all have in these types of meetings, and also in data sharing challenges and data co-production challenges that come about as well. And that leads to kind of scientific crediting for things. So I'm sure this has come up a little bit in other meetings, but we were really thinking about connectivity issues. So it's hard sometimes to join discussions. So even when researchers have the time, they might not necessarily have sort of like Wi-Fi minutes or like connection that's reliable to stick around. So that kind of reduces participation. And so we could think of some ways of articulating that, and then it gives us some space maybe in this type of paper to self-reference that and flag it further. And we've all kind of seen these challenges with chronology. They're quite varied, and of course they exist in the global temperate ecosystem sites and the Arctic, but there's a slightly different twist on it when we work in tropical and warmer ecosystems, and that are specific to chronology. And at least I haven't seen a document that sort of discusses and articulates that in detail. And we know that it translates from designing a project and actually getting new paleoenvironmental data, but also through the peer review, biases that come back. So I think many of us have seen that type of thing and experienced it, and it might be worth articulating. And so they all kind of trickle from there, that there's some of these kinds of biases that exist, but I don't think in this type of research it's been explicit. And of course with language as well is one we see quite a lot at the peer review stage of these kinds of research. And of course, getting back to money, it's always nice to ask for more money, but perhaps there's ways to redistribute funds in a different way. And it could be worth proposing these types of solutions as opposed to just asking for more funds. So there's some interesting ways to, create different funds for radiocarbon dates, for example, for paleoenvironmental research. And so we kind of, that's where we got to, but it really leads to thinking about how to increase participation in a more beneficial way, which is not the same as for researchers just working within the global north.
So yeah, it seems perhaps a little bit disconnected from maybe what the objective of this.
No, not at all, not at all. We rather wanted to go beyond that. So those questions which existed, and I think you could choose, as I said, very easily to ignore them, because we wanted to anyway go beyond that. So I think this is gold that we hit. And if we can say so, we literally had the similar kind of discussion, perhaps along the same lines, but with the same kind of, what could we say, steps. We also literally talked about all these things. We culminated them together in such a way that, so maybe I think Claudia, I'm going to put you on this job, because Claudia literally summarized it in 2 sentences, as I said earlier. So Claudia, do you want to summarize, because you were around for both the breakouts? And then Amila, of course, you can add it, because Amila has given us some of the very fantastic points to directly include them in the paper, right? So Claudia, please.
Summarize what? Well, about the radiocarbonages. and money and everything. Well, yes. Sorry, my mind was away. See, we were talking about one of the main problem and challenger at the same time is the funding for radiocarbon ages. But I see more problem in the archaeology group more than in paleoecology, paleoclimatology, because the funding are different. I mean, in general, we apply like paleoecology, we can get a little bit more funding than the archaeology. So the problem is why is important that? Because when we try to work together and integrate both data, how you know is confiable, is reliable, if the archaeological information. So that was that is the problem. So now the solution should be, I think get a funding for, I don't know, it's not get a funding, but some, I don't know, some laboratory or I don't know. Or archaeology, or say classify what is because when I have checked and reviewed the radiocarbon ages, the difference in South America or I don't know, maybe in another area, if you compare with North America, it's amazing. So we don't have anything, nothing, nothing. See? So that is the problem. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's complex because it's money, it's not the principal aims of this workshop, but at the same time, it's a barrier for getting the aims, the main aims.
Yes. No, but yeah. So Claudia, if you ask us, money is principal aim for everybody and everything, because we want to, run these initiatives, and that is going to be sort of a talking point for much longer time on day 3, right? Chavi, we literally have dedicated a session towards, any future fundings. But then these are certain sort of ideas that we can actually communicate to funders, whoever funders who are in our connection, eventually to try to identify or establish one day much interdisciplinary kind of fundings, right? So I think you are spot on with that funding. And I think one thing which Claudia actually brought in very readily is the data paucity, which is like a common problem across the global south. So if we are talking about the global south at large, the data paucity is very important. Data reliability, of course, comes as a second stage. Whatever data is available, that data is has to be, truthed to an extent. So that is one of those things which also came up in our, and that is one common problem which is across the global south. So which is one commonality, as we said, which exists. So that thing, that existed. And then at the end, I guess there is also talk of scale, which I want to bring in first, because I think then Amila can comment on other three things actually Amila brought into the table. So I think that he definitely should expand upon. So one thing is the scale is very important and the context is very important as well. So I think in order for the pSESYNTH to run, successfully in general and think about the global south at a time, is to think about time or Holocene in chunks. So for phase 1, Chavi and Manu and even Ignacio, while he was around, we thought like it could be the prime focus initially could be Holocene. But when we say Holocene, Holocene is still big of a timeline. So can we chunk time? And then can we then think about the commonalities or certain concrete themes for research as such, and then the context as well. So within that contextuality, can we talk? So that contextuality perhaps can be associated with the time as well. So that is one of the things that we basically is cross-cutting across the themes, but still relevant to all the themes, that time. So if we can think about, time slicing. So maybe Chavi, what I was thinking that we said that we do have the curated case studies. as an example. So those curated case studies can they be then on different time slices? Maybe one exclusive to, let's say, let Holocene only last millennium, maybe few which specifically talks about let's say Bronze Age, which also came, Sarah spoke about Bronze Age, but Bronze Age is one region, but not in another region. So that can still be region specific enough case study, but it will give a snapshot of different time slice, something like that. So thinking in terms of scales is another thing which came, again and again in our discussion. And
Yeah.
now I think over to Amila, who can actually give us, a summary of what he said, which literally had some fantastic points, and that applies to the entire global South, right, Amala?
Okay, thanks. And I will start like this. And when we compare global North and South, and global South, we have very limited number of data, or we have very limited number of publication. And if we consider IODP or ODP expedition, so we are limited to the several specific area. Just example, Bay of Bengal. And then again, if we examine in details about those expedition, and especially we are limited to the some specific age, maybe about Miocene and uplifting and what is the monsoon changes. So we are narrowed down into a specific time period and a specific maybe event or, some process. So this is one of the issue in the global South. And as a second, and validation of the proxy data. So there are many case studies in this global South, and some of these case studies are not interlinked or interconnected. So therefore, the validation of these data is very important. And so there are several proxy studies, and different proxies, maybe like some inorganic proxies based on the SRF results, or sometimes is some fossil records. So those records should be linked with the simulation. So still I search, and I have found very limited number of publication or studies which is try to link with the proxy data and some simulation data. So this is another issue. And third point is regional variabilities. And I little bit talk about that. And so maybe there are some several case studies are available in the different geographical region. So we need to do some kind of validation, or the consider the validity of this case study, which related to the each other. And because there should be some kind of regional simulation for our studies, especially for the global South. And so next is linked to the funding limitation. And when we compare with the global North research and global South research, so we have the very limited number of the age data. And especially for the C14 data, we have the very limited number of the C14 age data compared to the global North. So what will happen for that one? And since we have the very limited number of age data, normally we plan to, or we discuss as a general trends. So we miss several specific event like 4.2 kilo annums events. So such kind of specific event, and we mix. And so this is validate again for the extreme events, and we miss several extreme events, especially in the global South, due to this lack of age data. And so then, so as I mentioned earlier, so there are several extreme events and some major climatic changes. And so we have to identify what is the triggering point, or what is the initiation proxy for this kind of environmental changes compared to the global North. So we have the very limited studies to understand what is the governing factor for that kind of climatic changes. So this is another point I need to highlight. And since again, this is linked with the funding. So due to the lack of funding and other thing, compared to the global North, we have the limited number of publication compared to the global North. Yeah. So another new point I get point out at when we compare the research priorities especially maybe this is valid even for the India. And so paleoclimatic or those kind of research, so we get a very limited number of fundings, and especially this is valid for the Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, we identify some priority research area, and most of this paleoclimatic research are not in the priority list. So this is a very disadvantage when we applying for the some government fundings or some funding from the different organization. And in addition, we have the very limited number of data receptory and data curation. So we have to consider those things as well as the limited available source in the global south. And I think I discussed this thing in the breakup session. Do you need to add anything?
No, no, not at all. Yeah, yeah. So that I totally, as I said, I'd entrust you with just summarizing everything and more what we discussed, because as I said, while you were not around for the first breakout,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
couldn't have you for the first breakout, but you literally had those same thoughts sort of, and then you already summarized it for us anyway. So yeah, so I don't have anything else to add, but just to sum up, in the sense that Chavi is doing a fantastic job to get things on the Jamboard. The second slide, which was not populated, so Chavi is adding it, and then Chavi has also added Paleo DC. And so, Chavi, if you want to comment on that, you definitely should. Yeah, yeah. And then we can sum it up very quickly.
Yeah, it's yeah, I don't know if people here have heard before about this paleo. The DCN network is a paleo developing country paleo science network. I don't know what the current status of the network, how much active they have been, but we were approached last year in workshop by Brian Chase, who was or is actually one of the, let's say, coordinators or visible heads, along with Lynn Quick from South Africa, I think. So it's basically, it kind of the style of these challenges that we have been, or meta challenges that we have been discussing among the three of us here in the room, about lack of access to resources, language use, connectivity, data piracy, science parachute, all of these challenges that we are aware of, but nobody has really put black on white in when we do science, because we tend to think that we researchers are neutral and we are not biased towards anything. So that's not true. So if we think about these priority questions manuscript, that of course need to be driven by science, but in the context of all of these meta challenges, I think if you want to kind of spice it up and give the idiosincrasy of the global south challenges, that at the end is a global challenge. It's not related to global south specifically. Yeah, so we put, Colin pasted the image of the paleo DCN, but we can distribute the link. We are not, as long as I know, associated to this network as a pSESYNTH project, but
yeah,
it's a kind of a parallel resource or parallel network that at some point we can join forces, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. We literally talked about, having, because we do have exact same thing, except pSESYNTH. What else pSESYNTH has on its objective is the database, which Paleo DCN doesn't have, but it's a community mobilization, which is at the core of pSESYNTH, as we can say, So then that is definitely there. But we definitely talked about joining forces, but it hasn't happened. But it doesn't anyway exclude us from doing it now on, right? Chavi, so I think so Chavi just sent us the link via chat.
Yeah.
And just to, so I mean, we have sort of summed it up already in a way. But so I think we have hit certain issues which sort of didn't come during this Inqua Roma 2023 breakout sessions. And part of it is we, with different expertise, we were actually in the same room this time. So something that could not happen during Informa breakout session, because we ran, like thematic sessions where paleoecology people went one way, paleoclimatology and then archaeology. And then we discussed it sort of in silos. But here it didn't happen like that. So same thing with the subregions. Subregions sort of, people chose to be in that particular subregion which they have worked on or which they're little more comfortable with. So there were, one Asia Pacific subregion breakout session, then Americas, right? Chavi and Manu couldn't be there. He was running his own workshop that time. But the third one was Australasia and Oceania. So what I liked about today is basically we sort of broke those barriers, and we all with different expertise were in the same room. So in-person participants with different expertise were discussing about, across themes and across subregions. And even in the, online particles, they were doing the same. So it is very important that we got the bigger messages out of these sessions, different 2 breakout sessions and then also individual brainstorming session, 3 sessions we can consider if we want to. And then we got really nice set of bullet points. So which are here as well on the Jamboard, but also on same document which we culminated together soon after this Inquaroma. So we did have those. So that particular summary, I think we would love to circulate as soon as we are, we have completed this workshop, where it could be then in much sort of finer or format in terms of how publication would look like one day. And that one day, as I said, we will decide what could be the deadline for the first draft, because we definitely want to sink in our thoughts before they vanish, right? So they are on paper and we are in the flow. So I think let's set up a deadline on day 3. I think that's the one of the agenda items, isn't it, Chavi? So I think with that, we can, we can just do a little bit of.
I guess it's gonna be difficult to get I don't know, a tentative deadline, or at least we could instead discuss, I mean, not right now, but during the workshop, what's the
exactly
different levels of involvement that each of us can invest on or is willing to do. But yeah, it's definitely something that I would say that by the end of the year, so to speak, we should have something in a good shape to be submitted.
Sure. Yeah. So I think, do you want to do a little bit of housekeeping and ask people to come in around certain time while you break for lunch?
So we hit, so if we share, I think people can still see my screen. So we are basically, we reported the breakout discussions. Of course, this is relatively badly organized here, but we are gonna work together.
No, sure. It is as organized as possible. Don't worry about it.
So now, according to the program, we have a couple of hours for, lunch break, locally speaking. It's 1 p.m. here in Spain, it's 12 p.m. UTC. And so we will reconvene in a couple of hours at 2 p.m. UTC, 3 p.m. UTC, 3 p.m.
Local time.
3 p.m. local time. It shouldn't be so difficult. It's just 1 hour more. But
let's specify UTC so everybody knows that we are on UTC, and then they can calculate their respective time zones.
And,
so 2 p.m.
and you have your time compared so in case people don't know. But anyway. So and we will reconvene with the session moderated by Manu, and also Colin will participate as well about archaeological data sets and what's the type of data that we can find out there and how we can combine with other types of paleoscientific or paleosciences data. So that's the objective of the first, let's say, block of the post-lunch session, and then at 3 p.m. 3:30 p.m. UTC, we'll go through this Americas focus session, which is basically some sort of the mini version of what we run up until now, but focused on Americas specifically. So if people stay around, specifically, Claudia, Paula,
Carolina.
well, yeah, so of course, everybody is welcome to join. But yeah, yeah, we cannot really ask you to stay the whole day with us. So we know that everybody has some work to do. But yeah, that's all from the in-house, let's say, logistics. Yeah, we will leave the Zoom room open. So I won't close the Zoom so people can join in and out as they want. But yeah, unless there is no further question or comment. Charuta, Manu.
No.
Not a comment, just talking to you, Xavi, and Colin as well. So we make sure we meet 10 minutes before it starts, just to get everything started.
Perfect.
That's all I have to say.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thanks.
Okay.
And see you
thank
in
you.
a bit.
Yeah. That's it, no? For now. And
Yeah. So have a very Spanish lunch, 2 hours for sure, and then we'll be back. Okay. See you all see you
See you
all,
later.
most of you very soon. Yeah.
Just
see you later. Bye.